The wind here is actually really picking up.
Why? Nobody has answered for that.
Imagine that is now taken away from you.
These are the faces of some of the biggest news stories in America.
We want justice!
Where's the compassion?
They need to think about what happened.
George Floyd!
Faces that over time faded from the headlines as attention turned elsewhere. For as peaceful and as quiet as it is walking along the beach, it's hard to imagine what it was like on that day in 2018 when this Category 5 storm came in off the Gulf and crushed this community.
It's just tough to fork out that money and know that there's going to be enough people in this town to support it.
Now we're putting the spotlight back on them.
Picking up the pieces and going forward.
Each week, we're traveling to places home to major news stories you may remember.
Everything you work for, just all gone.
And introducing you to people who say it's important you get the full story.
When you have an understanding with a community, people come together.
We're here to support them in this crisis time.
Because we often don't fully learn the impact of an event.
Figure out where you are, what you have, and keep going. You know, you can't give up.
Until we look at it in hindsight. It's kind of chilly today by Florida standards. You can see that there's no one on the beach, but not a bad place to be. We're in Mexico Beach, Florida. This is on Florida's Panhandle. One thing we're noticing here as we're just walking along the beach is the amount of homes that are still under construction. You can hear it off in the distance. You see these right here. All of this is related to Hurricane Michael.
This is an ABC Action News Tracking the Tropics update.
And you can see it is starting to organize a bit, but still pretty ragged at the moment, and is expected to strengthen, possibly becoming a Cat 1 hurricane.
Now the forecast calls for it to become a Category 2.
Now expected to move in as a Category 3 storm.
6 Bay Area counties.
26 Florida counties.
35 Florida counties under a state of emergency, waiting in long lines for gas.
Remember, we can rebuild your house, but we cannot rebuild your life.
And it's headed over even more favorable conditions here over the next 24 hours, so we're likely going to see even more strengthening.
With the projected storm surge of 6 to 8 feet in this area.
As a Category 3 major hurricane.
They have not seen storm surge like this.
But also, Cat 4 winds are going to destroy this right here.
Hurricane Michael making landfall later today as a strong Cat 4 storm.
So we're looking at a Category 4.
This is going to be a catastrophic storm for that area.
That means extreme storm surge.
Of one of the most powerful hurricanes ever to strike the U.S.
Storm surge up to 14 feet possible.
Strongest storm to ever hit the Florida Panhandle.
The computer systems that people are relying on to get their information are also failing.
Intensifying dramatically in the last 24 hours.
Even homes with metal roofs like this one taking a beating.
People are being told to take shelter.
No one should be trying to get to a shelter at this point. Wherever you are, you should be hunkered down.
I told him, hold on, just hold on. I'm calling for help now. Oh, God.
Oops. I guess just first, like for you, when you think back to Hurricane Michael, what do you remember about that day?
I mostly remember thinking it wasn't going to be a big deal, even the morning of the hurricane.
Michael Scoggins lived in Mexico Beach for nearly 2 decades before Hurricane Michael hit in 2018. Were you here for it?
Oh yeah, I wrote it out in my house.
What was that like?
You know, I had steel hurricane shutters up, and you could hear the stuff hitting the roof and the hurricane shutters. But there are 2 pine trees on one side of the house and 2 pine trees in the back of the house. Those pine trees are going to be the ones that are going to come through the house. So we got into the car in the garage, which is the furthest point away from either trunks of either one of those trees, and we rode out the last hour and a half or so in the car, in the garage with our cats.
2 of those trees fell on Scoggins' roof. He said his home needed repairs, but he didn't suffer as much damage as some of his neighbors. Would you ever do it again?
Yeah,
like if you knew it was going to be a category
I think
5?
so, because I mean, I know what the problems are getting back into town afterwards, and I think I'd stay again. I've stayed through everything that's come our way since moving here 20 years ago, so certainly that's, hopefully that's the worst of it.
Scoggins' business, Killer Seafood, was one of several beachfront landmarks wiped out by Hurricane Michael. It had been open for more than a decade.
Well, you see, it's a full-on service kitchen. It's not a trailer. It's
Is it a tight fit, though, compared to what you had before?
Actually, it's almost a bigger fit.
Rather than rebuild his brick-and-mortar business, Scoggins put a trailer on his property. Instead of an indoor dining area, people sit outside.
Tight, but you know, it's pretty much the same kitchen I had in the other restaurant.
Wow. And then one day, though, you'll hopefully have what you had before.
Yeah, you know, I'm 66 years old, so if I ride this for another few years like this, we'll see. There's no reason to have Killer Seafood just go away.
What are the biggest challenges that the community's facing 5 years later?
Insurance is a big thing. Insurance and property taxes are going up. As all the beach property values escalate, so does the taxation on it, and so does the insurance on it. It's just tough to fork out that money and know that there's going to be enough people in this town to support it.
As another sunrise brings light to this hurricane-ravaged area, the long journey to recovery becomes clearer.
Well, Michael, it changed the dynamic of that town because what happens is when you build new, oftentimes prices go up. And so it can price people out of their little slice of paradise, right? This was a more blue-collar town, but now you're seeing homes being built that are multi-million-dollar structures on the beach.
Nice. Yeah.
They're very nice, but that means that the people who used to inhabit those can't afford to live there anymore.
Forrest Saunders covers the Florida State Capitol for Scripps News. In that role, he's covered recent efforts to make insurance more affordable and equitable in the state. Some of the people we spoke with referred to just in the state of Florida, when it comes to insurance, it's a crisis.
Yeah.
Is that what's happening here?
That's part of it. I mean, it all factors into the bottom line, right? And property insurance is out of control in this state. We have the highest rates in some parts of the state in the nation. And so what you're seeing in Mexico Beach is part of a broader problem across the state, which is that people not only are having to deal with rebuilding their homes, higher construction costs than they had 5 years ago, but also higher costs to insure the property that they're rebuilding.
This isn't a bad place to live. Nice
No.
view. Chris Hubbard is the Mexico Beach city administrator. His home in a town nearby was one of more than 50,000 structures that were damaged or destroyed by Hurricane Michael in the state of Florida.
But as far as the townhomes and the single-family homes and everything that was here on the south side of Highway 98, it was all destroyed. I mean, you can see now it's all new construction. All these homes are either in the process of being built now or they've been built over the last 5 years since Hurricane Michael hit.
And this was all related to Hurricane Michael, all the building that we're seeing?
Yes, yeah, everything that's going on right now is Hurricane Michael related. And right now in Mexico Beach, you can't get a single-family home for less than $500,000. And so because of those prices, we're also having a hard time getting employees here. You know, your younger working people to work in the restaurants, the service industry, normal businesses that you would see in a tourist destination like this. It's just hard for those businesses to find people to work there.
Do you want to have a real building again?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have a real building. We had enough insurance to pay off the mortgage on our property here, but nothing left to really stake a new build, especially at the new construction requirements and the new construction cost. I mean, we had couple $100,000 left on our mortgage. To rebuild what we had, we'd have to take out probably about $1 million mortgage just to elevate the property. Everything you have to do nowadays that you didn't have to do in a building. It was built back in the early 50s.
Mexico Beach will never go back to being the way it was before Hurricane Michael. Hurricane Michael took, old Mexico Beach and destroyed it just like it destroyed the homes and the buildings that were here. And now that we've got this new face that Hurricane Michael, forced upon us with all this new construction, where do we want to go from here?
Right now we're headed to the Driftwood Inn, which is a landmark here on the Panhandle in Mexico Beach. This hotel, it's been around forever, but it took major damage during the storm. It took years for them to reopen again, and we're headed to go talk to one of the owners about what recovery has looked like. Oh wow, very nice. They actually tell us that in this room, this bed, this was the only one to actually survive the storm. So this, you can tell it's a little bit older than the rest of the hotel. It actually survived Hurricane Michael. Oh wow, what a view. So the Driftwood Inn was one of the first major businesses in Mexico Beach to reopen after the storm. And you just think of the time that it took to get this building to where it is today. The storm hit in 2018 and it didn't reopen until the summer of 2022. Go ahead.
Is that good?
That's perfect. And what's your first name?
I'm Peggy Wood.
Perfect. And how long have you owned the Driftwood Inn?
I bought the Driftwood in August of 1975.
Wow. What was it about, when you think back to 1975, that you wanted to buy a hotel in Mexico Beach, Florida?
I wanted to be on the beach.
Had you worked in hotels before, like hospitality?
I had no idea what I was doing. I just, okay, let's buy a hotel and I'll move to the beach.
Peggy Wood and her husband Tom bought the original Driftwood Inn for $138,000 in 1975. Today the couple is in their 80s. Their daughter Shauna runs the day-to-day business. What do you remember, I mean, emotionally when you realized just that the Driftwood was gone?
I don't know, I think we all said, well, we got to rebuild.
Like there was never a question?
Sean and I did not want to give up and not have the hotel. And so we finally talked everybody into rebuilding with us. I have 3 children and 2 of them thought, no, don't go through it. But I think they like the fact that we have it back.
The Woods say they received about $5 million from insurance. It costs $15 million to rebuild. As a result, a stay at the new Driftwood Inn costs almost twice as much as it did before Hurricane Michael. Is that one of the big differences, is you have people who just didn't return to Mexico Beach? As I know it's,
Well, it was so expensive to build back that a lot of people couldn't afford it. We were insured, we thought, for enough money. It was like 1/3 of enough money.
It's that hard
to build. So we had to come up with money to build it.
Can you sum up how, when it comes to a disaster like this, that recovery doesn't really happen overnight?
No, it definitely doesn't happen overnight. You know, here we are 5 years after Hurricane Michael. 3 of the large projects, you know, that the city has haven't even broken ground yet.
FEMA committed $100 million to Mexico Beach's recovery in the aftermath of the storm. The money will not be enough to cover the cost of a new fire station, jetty repairs, or a new public pier. City leaders are optimistic that FEMA will eventually pick up the tab for those projects and that they'll be able to break ground soon.
You know, this is the location where the pier was before Hurricane Michael destroyed it. And what we had was a walkway that basically, you know, started out there closer to the parking lot. It came up a ramp, and then the pier extended from here all the way out.
What will it be like for you, knowing that you played a big role in it, but remembering back to the days after Hurricane Michael, when that pier is complete, what will that symbol be to the community?
I think when the pier's back, I think what that's going to be to the community is we're back. You know, we're fully back now at this point. We've got everything that, you know, back that we lost during Hurricane Michael, and it's just going to be a huge, huge victory for this town. It's going to be a huge relief for this town. It's going to be something, you know, that we're proud of.
That's such a great thing to have on the front of your.
Yeah, he got beat up a little bit on the trip, with a dog bowl on his head.
I thought that was his hat.
And that's where our stuff went, all through the woods back there. The only thing I recovered was the statue, the captain. He floated about a half mile away and
Did he really?
Wedged up under somebody's boat.
Wow, he's still standing today.
Yeah, he's still around.
I've covered hurricanes before, wildfires in my career, and when you go back to communities, one thing you notice after a disaster, especially one as powerful as Hurricane Michael was, is there's just little things you notice along the way, like here, the trees, or lack thereof. You can tell 5 years later that it looks much different still than it did before that storm hit.
If I'm over at any of my friends' houses, you have a higher elevation from the beach, and you look back over the panorama of it, it's just not the same. It used to be a little beach community carved out amongst a forest, and I mean a forest. They're right there, in that hollow right there was trees so thick you couldn't see through it. Now, as you look around, it's a forest of dead trees or yellowed out trees, skeletons of houses. It's very stark in its overall look.
Is it different now, and especially like here in Tallahassee, in terms of the attention that insurance and then what happens after storms, the attention that that's getting now?
I think the state of Florida has gotten down its recovery efforts to a science. I mean, we are one of the best states when it comes to recovery because we deal with it so often. The issue that we constantly hear from environmental critics is that you're not really doing much to help the problem. I mean, the problem is climate change, they say, and Florida isn't trying to reduce its carbon emissions. Florida isn't doing enough to try and ensure that we have a greener future so that these severe storms don't happen quite as often. Instead, what it's doing is addressing the symptoms, right? Which is, they're coming up with infrastructure bills to harden property. They're coming up with programs that will actually pay people to increase the hardening on their homes. It doesn't necessarily get to the heart of the problem, and that's one of the big issues I think that Florida faces as it moves into the future, is that we're going to keep seeing these storms. How do you do something about that?
In hindsight now, 5 years later, what have you learned about what it takes to recover from a hurricane?
It takes a lot of patience. Nothing's going to happen very quick. We got the trailer down here and open before they even opened up Highway 98 here, so you had to park way down here or way down there and walk down here. Was it stupid to open? Yeah, but I was bound and determined to get open by the end of the year. But patience, and slowly and surely people started coming back. The construction workers started doing their things. The cleanup workers were still here doing that. So we had a lot of business that wasn't tourist business at the time that kept us going.
Has tourism in Mexico Beach changed?
I don't know. A lot of our old guests have come back, but we picked up a lot of new people, and we are so thankful for all the support that people have given us through, you know, the year we've tried to bring it back.
Is there anything that you've learned or anything you've kind of, I guess the person you are today compared to, you know, having gone through this, like has it had an impact on you?
I don't know, it's just that you figure out where you are, what you have, and keep going. You know, you can't give up.
Michael Scoggins couldn't control what happened as a result of Hurricane Michael, but he could control his response. It's something he takes pride in to this day. An initiative to cook meals in the days following the storm for anyone and everyone in need.
So under a tent with generators and grills and stoves, we fed about 1,500 meals a day for 6.5 weeks. And that was the community hub that brought Mexico Beach back together. We had volunteers from the community, we had volunteers from some of the companies, corporate companies that we were, so all of that made Mexico Beach strong and one cohesive kind of unit.